TGIF, it's Friday for us. I know this is not going to come out on a Friday, but this is going to be a little bit of a fun Friday. We typically cover some heavy topics on this podcast, but today is all about the fun. And we are so excited to welcome a guest to the podcast. She's formerly a PR representative for Miramax Films. She went from red carpets to red wine. And so now she is in the spirits and wine industry and is an author of her new book called A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting. And so please welcome Danielle Frank to the Lila's podcast. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you both for having me. Excuse the raspy voice. I think it's allergies or maybe a little cold, but it gives me that sexy
Us-
Miley Cyrus
yeah,
voice.
absolutely. Love when my voice is a
We
little
love it.
raspy.
For sure, for sure. So yeah, thank you so much for coming and being on here. Super excited to dive into this, especially whenever, you actually were like a full-on Hollywood insider. So can you give us some details about this whole world and then how you made this amazing transformation into where you're at now?
Yeah, I feel like my whole story has been rooted in transformation. The kind that doesn't necessarily happen overnight and just a series of unexpected pivots, plot twists. But that's what's made the story of my life. So, yeah, as you as you mentioned, I worked at Miramax Films in my 20s, living in New York, where I'm from, and it was great traveling the world, going to the Cannes Film Festival, Venice Film Festival, press tours all over the globe, promoting films with the talent. And yeah, it's just, I'm always been somebody that's like itching for something more. And, I thought I'd stay in entertainment forever. I didn't plan on leaving that. But I did want to move to LA. I moved to LA, but there were no studio jobs at the time. But one of the PR firms that rep talent, they were hiring and they were interested in having me join. And, there was part of me that was like, "Ugh, I don't want to be a personal publicist. No disrespect to the people that do that. It's just not what I imagined myself doing. A friend worked in personal PR. She said, no, you'll love it. And I was just like, oh, it gets me to LA and I'll have a job. So I joined a PR firm. And the first day I got there, um, I noticed like three other of the publicists in the office were crying, like in their office. It was a very toxic environment, this agency I was at. And I just remember that feeling like, what did I get myself into? All my time at Miramax, 6 years, sure, there are days that I woke up like, oh, maybe hungover or tired. I didn't feel like going to work. There was never a day where I had that like pit in my stomach, that angst.
Yeah.
And in the 3 months I was at this PR firm, there were multiple mornings I had that awful pit in my stomach. And that was like the first sort of eye-opening experience for me where I saw like, this isn't serving me. And yeah, I just thought, okay, I'll just find something else. I was looking around in entertainment and my sister was working for an agency that worked for Bacardi in New York and is a job that she absolutely loved. And she's like, oh, they're hiring in LA. And next thing you know, I got hired within Bacardi. I was there for 10 years and then now at Moët Hennessy going on 12 years because I soon realized, what I always like talking about is embracing the pivot, right? When you're in it, when you're on that bridge, cross over it intentionally and embrace it because it might show you that this new path is the journey you were meant to be on all along. And that's what I learned. The
Yeah.
wine and spirits industry is a really amazing industry. I'm very fortunate that I've gotten to work for fantastic companies representing fantastic brands. That was my first major pivot, but it also showed me with future pivots, how it gives me the armory. It gives me the armory to know how to navigate that and know that it's going to be okay. You picked yourself up.
I love how you
That's so
you were
true.
being successful in what you were doing, right? I mean, you were successful, you had a good job, you were in a city that you were enjoying and you still really listened to yourself and said something else is out there for me. This ain't it, as I often say. This ain't it. And that, it's a little bit easier, I would think, to walk away if you're not finding that success in your career and maybe you've stalled out and you can't climb the ladder anymore or whatever you're trying to do. But if you are being successful, to then really listen to yourself and say, yes, I'm being successful and it seems to check the boxes, but it's not, I think that is where we talk a lot about how it takes so much courage to really say, I'm going to do this because it doesn't feel right, and listen to what my body and my mind are telling me.
It's just like, when we talk about my book, it's like I wrote this book 14 years ago. And that's
Wow.
always been something that if I said to myself, if I don't do anything with this, because I've always gotten good feedback, it's going to plague me on my deathbed. And
Yeah.
that's why last year I was like, that's it. I'm doing it. I learned about the hybrid publishing route, which seemed more interesting to me than self-publishing because self-publishing seemed daunting. So yeah, it was just something like I live by that credo of, you have to try and do everything that you want to do in this life.
I love it. That gives me chills hearing you
That's
say that. I feel the
I
same.
know, right? I know. And I love that you were like, I'm going to figure out a way to do this, because you didn't, I'm guessing like there wasn't any sort of agent involved in publishing your book, or maybe there was, but you were like, I'm going to figure out a way to get this done.
Yeah, I
Yes.
wish I had an agent. That was why I shelved this 14 years ago. Is when the book Go the F to Sleep came out, and it sort of opened the door for this new genre of adult children's books. And so I was sending this out, but agents don't want you unless you've been published.
Yeah.
Publishers don't want you unless you have an agent. Now there's this hybrid publishing model. So it's like self-publishing, but I have a former publisher like guiding the process. I'm paying for everything. I don't have, publicity, but I'm doing it all. But yeah, I was like, great, I'm going to do it. I'm going to check this off my life's bucket list and get this book out there, whether anybody likes it or not.
Yeah. Good for
I
you.
love it.
That's amazing. That's
Well, and the
awesome. Cause
genre is so fun too. Yeah. Because it's about that
it
adult
is.
humor that we need to have applied to this thing of raising kids. And to be able to actually talk about it like in a very real and funny, and then in a way that not only is relatable to the reader, like whenever I shared with you guys, the podcast knows, we have an 11-year-old who at times can be an expert at back talk. Like she's really good at it. And so whenever I read the chapter on this book, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I told my husband about it, and I was like, look, now we have an excuse that we can go and open up a nice bottle of wine whenever this happens. And so I'm excited for you to share that with us as you talk about the book and your inspiration for it. Really, like where did it come from?
So it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that came together for me. I always loved writing. I just have like a creative outlet. I'm also somebody that's like, just wants to make the world a better place. And when I hear about, especially watching my niece and nephew when they were younger, how mean kids can be. So one of the first projects I started working on was an actual children's book series. And it was like each book teaches kids about a different culture, because I firmly
Mm,
believe that, I'm no parenting, like, I didn't like clinical parenting expert. I'm actually not even a parent, and we'll talk about that. But like, um, I firmly believe that it happens at a young age. Kids are impressionable, and they need to know early and at a young age, that just because somebody looks different or talks a different language or eats different foods or any of that, we're all the same. We all sleep under the same star of skies. And, and we can't believe, like, I firmly believe that happens at, a young age, that impression needs to be. So I started working on an actual children's book, trying to teach kids, and it all rhymes because I love rhyming for some reason. And, so I had been working on that, and simultaneously I was engaged to be married. My fiance has two kids from a previous marriage. Um, and he would go back and forth about whether he wanted kids. And when we got engaged, she's like, "All right, we could do it. We can have a kid." Um, Now there were other things in the relationship that were wrong. It's not just about the kid thing. But once we got engaged, it was like quickly thereafter, I just sort of opened my eyes and was like, "This guy actually doesn't want to have a kid, and I don't want
mm,
to have a kid with somebody that's just like doing it. That doesn't want to, that isn't dying to have a kid with me."
right.
So I broke it off, mid 30s, and, sort of that realization that like motherhood and that path might not happen for me. But at the same token, I realized, that doesn't mean the end of nurturing goes away.
Mm-mm.
I'm very involved with my niece and nephew's lives, and I'm very involved in my friends' kids' lives. I'm Aunt Danielle to many, many friends' kids. I love it. I, take them to escape rooms, jack them up on sugar, and then send them home for bedtime.
That's right.
But all those things sort of came together when I realized like I might not be a mom. I also realized that I may not be raising children of my own, but I still felt a pull to help shape how the kind of humans people are raising.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
and like I said with Adam Mansbach's book, the Go the F to Sleep, it really opened the door for this genre. So I thought, oh, maybe instead of reaching the kids at a young age, wouldn't it be fun to, have something like talk to the parents right when they become a new parent about, the importance of instilling manners and, not bullying and all that. And again, as somebody who's not a clinical professional, I wanted it to be light and fun. It's a humor book. It's meant to be. I'm
Yeah.
not preaching. Um, but all these things came together, and I was watching my niece and nephew one day, and they were young at the time. And although good kids, of course, every kid has the propensity to whine in some capacity. And
Sure.
they were whining about something, and I said, Aunt Danielle drinks wine. She doesn't listen to wine. So there it all started to come together, all
Yeah.
the piece of the puzzle. And then the last element was because I work in the wine industry, a lot of people find learning about wine or like, when I go out to dinner with my friends, they pass me the wine list. Like, no, just because
Yeah.
I work in the wine industry, it doesn't have to be jarring. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be daunting. Wine is, it's all subjective. What I like may be
Mhm.
different than what you like. And so I love the idea of making wine knowledge easy and accessible for people to learn about. So that's where it all put together. This book that is 11 chapters of raising your kid raising your kids well, parallel to wine terminology. Every time I use a wine term, it gives the definition, and at the back of the book, it gives a basic understanding of how wine is made. So it's really meant to be light and humorous and laugh, but they are poignant lessons on,
Yeah.
and I say you don't need to be a parent to know basic human behavior and decency. And I
Mhm.
don't need, they're all just lessons on, raising just a good human being.
100%. And I love that you mentioned that just because you don't have biological or adopted or step kids, that you are still very nurturing. Some of the most nurturing women I know don't have children. Some dear friends of mine, but they are nurturing. And as a parent, and I was a former school psychologist for 2 decades, working in public schools here in South Carolina, and just growing up and dealing with trauma, we know how important it is for kids to have other adults besides their parents that they can trust. And so we need people, parents, we need people like Danielle. We need, like my friend Britt, she's a perfect example. These nurturing, really trustworthy adults that our kids can grow up around and learn great lessons from, because that we're all kind of shaping behavior. But I 100% agree that it truly starts at home and what we teach our
Yeah.
kids from a very young age.
I've seen parents trade war stories like battle hardened soldiers, right? And sometimes when you're in the trenches, it's not as easy to see what's right in front of you. It's not as easy to see the humor in it. It's not as easy to see that that grape juice you're drinking could one day turn into a fine Cabernet.
Yeah.
Right.
So it gives me a little fresh perspective. But like I say, I'm all these kids, my friends' kids, my niece and nephew, with my ex's kids when I was a bonus mom, I still felt heavily, and I still feel heavily invested in their lives. So it comes from a place of love and empathy.
Absolutely. And that definitely comes through even in your writings about it because um it's fun, it's engaging, but it's not judgmental and it's not condemning of anybody's behavior. It's just so descriptive. And that's why when I was talking to my husband about it, I was able to be more jovial and happy about, the back talk kind of experience instead of just feeling like, oh, all over again with it. And I think that that element does make it much, much, much lighter. And it shows how temporary these kind of rough moments can kind of be. And that our approach to it is what helps to foster that fine wine later in life, just by, taking the moments to appreciate the grape as it's growing, right?
Exactly. That's a great analogy, and that's what I say. It's like also when you're tasting the wine for the first time. There's not wine in here, it's tea, obviously, from my voice, but, you know, it's all about the pause, right? You just pause, take a breath, breathe it in, right? Sometimes we just need to pause because it's temporary, and, you'll get out of the teenage years soon enough and or the terrible 2 soon enough.
Yeah.
Right.
One
Right.
thing,
For
when I
sure.
was
For
reading your
sure.
book, it made me think about just some examples. And first off, I always say, like, no one's a perfect parent. You know, I have tons of training in behavior, but I mess up all the time. And, but one thing, it's easy to observe it when it's somebody else, right? And somebody else's kid. And one thing I see a lot in public is you'll see parents sort of reprimanding a kid like very loudly, almost like they need all the adults in the vicinity to know that they don't condone the behavior their child is exhibiting in that moment. But then in the same 5-minute span, you'll watch them sort of inadvertently reinforce that exact behavior that they've just announced is not acceptable, right? And so I think so much of what we do as parents is like we need the world to know that we're good parents, right? That we're trying our best. But what oftentimes ends up happening is we say no, no, no for the first 10 minutes, and then we get tired of saying no, and then the yes comes out, and we've just reinforced that behavior that if I hold out long enough, mom's going to say yes or dad's going to say yes. And so I love you have a chapter or a lesson in the book about, like they need to know who's boss. Like you lay it down, you lay the hammer down. And I'm a tough parent. My kids will tell you that I'm a tough mom on them, because I like that's it. I'm 5'2". They're gonna tower me in no time, and so I need them to know I might be 5'2", but damn it, I'm the boss of this house, and what mom says goes, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, and to your point, I mean, nobody's a perfect parent, nobody's a perfect human, right? We all we all err. But the thing with parenting is like, you have to be the boss. Sometimes you just need to like rehear it and reinforce it. There's a chapter in there about is your kid a mulled wine? Mulled wines are heated. They you add spice to it, so it's spiced and sometimes served as a punch. So this is about is your kid heated, spiced? Are they packing a punch? Are they a bully, outside of the home?
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of parents tell me that that really resonated with them. One mom told me that she had gotten a notice about like their kid bullying, and at first she ignored it. And then when she was reading that chapter, she's like, "Oh, you know what? Like, you don't want to believe it's your kid. You don't want to believe
Mhm.
it's your kid, but unfortunately, it's somebody's kid sometimes. So sometimes you need a gentle reminder, like to really look who your kid is outside the home and nip it in the bud now."
Right, and you make that point, like, it's our responsibility as parents to know how our kids are behaving outside of our immediate environment or when they're not within eyesight. And so I think that, very valid point. It's hard to recognize when your kid might be the one at fault or whatever, because you realize then, okay, what did I do? Right. I'm always looking at my
Yeah.
behavior. How did my behavior then impact their behavior? Because I firmly
Mhm.
believe kids are learning from watching us. And like I said, I fuck it up all the time. But
That's
um,
not just you though, it's the environment, it's TV,
It's all
it's
the
some of
things.
it's unavoidable, so you can't blame yourself entirely.
I also love you say I read in your book, this is how I knew you were a New Yorker because I've never heard anybody else use this term to describe kids besides my in-laws who are also New Yorkers. But you call them fresh. Like when my daughter is being a little sassy, my mother-in-law will say, "Oh, you're fresh today." Is that a New York thing? Is it? I was like,
I
she's
was
got to
just
be a New
about to
Yorker.
ask you. I used to get that when I was younger, like, "Don't be fresh," and, like,
Yeah.
the threat of the bar of soap in your mouth, but I didn't know that that was, like, an East Coast or New York thing.
I love that. That is so fun. Yeah, that's a nice way of saying sort of sassy or smart ass or, a few of the
Right.
other things.
Ooh, you fresh.
Now it has different meaning, right? "You look fresh."
Yeah, right. She'll take that as a compliment next time. Be like, oh, good.
Yeah.
So I have some questions about like the wine portion of this again, because I think it's so beautiful how you intertwine it within the book. And again, I I love our children and I like being a parent, but I really love wine.
It's not terrible, you have to have your enjoyment.
Right. So with
Mm.
this, what have you learned from being in the wine industry that you think just connects people? Because I find that whenever you're out and about with people that there is something about that glass of wine and conversation that just bridges so many gaps, and what have you seen really helps to bridge cultures and understanding just from that kind of a perspective?
I mean, I love, the what I love about the industry and the brands as well. It's like it's storytelling and it's romanticism, right? Like you're remembering where you had your first sip of Dom Perignon, or you're drinking this wine and it evokes a memory of sharing this bottle with your grandparents who may or may not be around anymore, or you are on a trip and you enjoy, like, it's all about the romanticism and, what it evokes, what it reminds you of, and then the storytelling. Everything is about storytelling, but when you have brands, and I'm shepherding brands that have such history, I love telling the story of Madame Clicquot. I mean, talk about a badass woman. She was essentially like the first female entrepreneur. And, when you hear all of the history that went into the creation of Veuve Clicquot Yellow Label, every time I sip a glass of Veuve Clicquot, I'm thinking about Madame Clicquot and what she did to put that in my glass. And yeah, it's all about storytelling. And hopefully if you're enjoying good brands, you're enjoying the taste. I know, like, I'm a huge foodie, so I
Mhm.
love what it does for, like, thinking about the pairing and how it enhances my meal as well.
Well, I just learned something too. I had no idea that we've had that kind of a background and history to it. So I am definitely going to be mindful of that. My next step for sure.
I I don't know if you're a reader, but there's, a great book by Talar Mazzeo. I think it's just called The Widow Cliquot. They made a movie based on it. The movie was terrible. The book, I could not put it down. It's fantastic. Her story is amazing, and every time I get to go to Champagne, I always ask, not everybody gets to do this, but I ask, the Maison, I'm like, can we go to the archives? That's my favorite. They have a room, a separate building where they have all the archives, everything that Madame Clicquot, like her ledgers. And, back then, the way they did business was like writing letters. And every time you wrote a correspondence, you had to write a second one. So you had a copy for your books. And you did this with every letter. And so we have copies of everything. Like, it's wild. The history in
Incredible.
there is just, yeah, it's mind blowing. I could geek out on that.
I mean, I
That is
just wanna
fun.
thank you for telling me how to pronounce Clico, because boy, have I been butchering that for 20 plus years.
Well, everybody says Veuve, which I
Like
did
I
on my
just said, yeah.
interview.
Mhm.
I said Moët Chandon. It's Moet. There was actually a
Mhm.
Saturday Night Live skit about that. It's Moet, but I said Veuve Clicquot, which everybody says, but
Mhm.
it's Veuve,
Mhm.
and you remember this because it rhymes with love.
Mhm.
I love that. You have so much knowledge. Just I love that you really married these 2, um, very kind of, like, separate topics and married them into one book because
Mhm.
you do have all this wine knowledge, and like Sarah, I learned a lot. Very excited, I'm going to
Mhm.
Sonoma in June, and just reading it, I'm like, "I'm gonna know so much more now just from the wine terminology." And so just that sharing, like, your knowledge and drawing from your personal experiences, I think is what makes this book so relatable and fun and interesting. I loved it. I loved, lesson 7, the tough love lesson. I loved, I think you said something like, "Don't let your kids run amok or they become a little fuck," or something. It's like there's so much truth in
Oh,
what you
really
say,
funny.
but it's also funny and
Mhm.
relatable, right? Like
Well, thank you. That was my goal, right? Like I said, I wanted to see the table to how kids were raised well. I like making people laugh. I wanted it to be approachable way, and I want to make wine knowledge fun and
Mhm.
easy. It all married together in this book, and that's what I said. I mean, this book is great for parents. It's great for a baby shower. Pair it with a onesie, you're done with
Oh,
your day.
yeah.
1,000%.
You
It
know,
will be my new
but
baby gifts for
but
people.
Perfect.
But I say it's even great for, like, just if you're a wine lover and
Mhm.
you just wanna laugh and learn about wine. You don't even need to be a parent. It's just a funny, humor book. So, I'm
Mhm.
I'm glad you both enjoyed it so much, so thank you.
What's your favorite chapter in it? Like you said you wanted to read an excerpt from it, so where's this coming from?
Okay, well, I don't have a favorite chapter because that would be like choosing a favorite child.
Right, it is tough.
But I'll read, if I can read, lesson 3, you don't want your kids to ferment. So
Yeah.
fermentation process in winemaking is when you convert sugar into alcohol. So when we think of sugar, it's something sweet. Alcohol can be harsh and biting. You don't want them to turn from someone that's sweet into someone
Right.
harsh and biting. It all
Right.
is about teaching them manners. Okay. Manners, manners, manners are the key to it all. These lessons need to start even when they're small. Teach them this from day one before they start to crawl. You don't want your kid to be the sour grape in the bunch and turn into a spoiled brat that kids want to punch. When they start talking, make sure they know thank you and please, and to always say bless you when they hear someone sneeze. Please and thank you are an absolute must. Without that, your child's a total bust. There's nothing worse than a child who has behavior that is crude, because it'll continue as they're older and become someone who's rude. People don't take kindly to and aren't nice to those with attitude because it's very off putting and puts others in a bad mood, oftentimes causing confrontation and leads to a nasty feud. Wanting to put a little bit of poison in your child's food. Is that really how you want your kids to be viewed? Wouldn't you prefer that there's someone who's wooed? Without manners, they'll ferment and turn into someone harsh and biting. They may turn into a kid who's rude, obnoxious, and always fighting. So teach your kids some manners and to have some heart and soul. Without that, your kid may well turn into an a hole.
It's
So
facts.
true.
It's facts. It's facts. Well, and I think I don't know where our idea that we can't, um, I guess, be more. I don't know that forceful is the right word, but more direct and I don't even know that hard's the right word, but those are the words that are coming to my mind whenever it comes to raising kids and steering them in those directions. It's like we're afraid that we're going to hurt their feelings if we're giving them, a critique about their behavior when really that is not the case. It does come down to nipping that kind of in the bud and making sure that they have that understanding of what manners, being polite, respectful, empathetic, honest, like these major core values are as a kid instead of just trying to sugarcoat and be like, oh, let's not do that. It's not nice. Yeah,
Danielle, I
I love it.
wonder, do you find yourself sometimes like, correcting's not the right word, but kind of like if if Auntie Danielle is seeing her niece or nephew misbehave, like, do you sometimes like say, hey, we don't talk to adults that way, or you don't talk to your mom that way. Do you find yourself sort of reprimanding in some situations?
It's really hard. I don't do that with my friends' kids.
Yeah,
It's hard because when you are the aunt and it is my sister, I am vested. I'm vested in my niece's, I have
absolutely.
her best interest at heart and I want to see her grow up and she's a fantastic human being.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of the opposite. I have to like stop myself from correcting other people's kids because I worked in a school for 2 decades or worked in multiple schools
Yeah.
for 2 decades. So I'm used to sort of um acknowledging good and bad behavior in children. And so, a lot of times I can't help myself. It flies out of my mouth. That's not safe. Like if I see a kid doing something that's not safe, that's not safe. We don't, what's the number one rule? Safety first. And so I
Yeah.
really have to, now that I don't work in a school every single day, I still am at, picking my kids up or drop off or just in the neighborhood. Or kids are in my house all the time. I have to be like, very like, "Oh, you don't have to comment on every behavior," but I do feel a little bit responsible if they're in my care, if they're at my house, like, if they're doing something that I wouldn't let my own kids do, or if you just see them doing something where they could hurt themselves, like, I as an adult, maybe it's the educator in me, but I feel the need to say, "Hey, like, that's not safe. I don't want you to knock 2 front teeth out, like, let's not skateboard down the front steps."
Yeah. I'm that way with people with like dogs. I was like driving yesterday and this woman was like dragging her dog and I felt the need to be like, I like rolled down the window and I was like, "Stop dragging that dog." I mean, she looked like she was really a mean dog owner, so it really broke my heart. But yeah,
Oh,
in the same way with people with dogs.
One thing I do if I hear a parent, sometimes we've all been in that situation where you hear a parent just reaming a kid out in public or just talking maybe really negatively about the child with an earshot. And what I like to do is like flip the script and then I'll just start like praising the hell out of my own kid. Like I just want to show them a different option, right? That we don't always have to just hammer every single little thing kids do because they're humans and they're going to make lots of
Yeah,
mistakes. And it's okay to ignore some of that in some instances,
mhm.
particularly in a public setting, and to
yeah,
acknowledge the things they're doing right. And then have a private conversation afterwards of like, you did these things right, but we got to work on how you respond to mom when she says it's time to go, or whatever the
yeah.
case may
Mhm.
be. I
For
don't know
Yeah,
how
sure.
I
you do
love
that with
that.
a
I love
dog
having
owner.
a
Maybe you just walk past her with, like, treats and, like, petting your dog, telling him what a great dog it is. Like, maybe she should pick up on that.
oh, do you know how many times I just
Oh,
wanted to scoop up their dog and take him
Take them
home?
with you.
Oh,
I feel
100%.
that way about
yeah.
children all the
100%.
time.
I would also say too, I heard you say this, like, I don't know that you I don't know that you have to have the same experience as someone else to have understanding of it. And so,
Mm.
I don't think that being a parent grants me any expertise on a parent or being able to be one. And I remember, just to kind of use the analogy, I worked with trauma a whole bunch. I've never been in any, thank goodness, traumatic kind of based situation. And so people can say, well, how do you know what you're doing if it hasn't happened to you? That's not the kind of education that's needed in order to be able to convey heart, to convey meaning or understanding with somebody about whether it be trauma, parenting advice, anything. It's a human experience that we're all sharing and talking about. And being able to have a gift where you're able to do it clearly, with humor, again, relatability, and really normalizing just some of the day to day headaches that come with the process. I think that your book does a absolutely amazing job of capturing all of those qualities in it and then just sharing it in a fun, again, easy, relatable, quick. It's a great quick read. By the time you read that book, I promise if your kid has acted out, you will feel great afterwards. 100%.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, I always say, you don't need to be a grape to know how to make wine, right? Or,
Mhm.
you don't need to be a parent, but I may not be a parent, but I was a kid. I was a
Right.
kid and I know how I reacted to things. I know how I liked to be communicated to. I know the lessons that I heeded, so yeah, there's a lot you learn also from your experience as a kid. I mean, when I was a bonus mom with my ex's kids, I grew up with, a stepmother and when I was going to step into that role, I remember there was a time when his oldest son, it's hard being the kid that shuffles between from one house to the other. And I remember he was at our place one school night. It was a Monday, and he left his homework at his mom's, and his dad was like, unacceptable, too bad. And I was like, I can run him there in the morning and then take him to school. Not a big deal. And the dad was just like, nope, he needs to learn a lesson. And, again, I don't need to be a parent to know like what it feels like to be that kid. I was that kid, and it's really hard. It's hard to be the kid in the middle. And sometimes you just need a little bit of empathy from that situation. So yeah, I mean, we heed our lessons from
100%.
our own experience, from our environments, from, witnessing and being engaged, involved.
You also just acknowledge that, like, kids need to experience the struggle and productive struggle, whatever you want to call it, but not like putting them in a bubble and protecting them from everything in life. And I'll be honest with you, that's something that I really struggle with, right? Because I didn't have like this terrible childhood. I had a pretty good childhood, but there was some trauma in there. There was, divorced parents, sexual child abuse for many years. So I mean, I definitely experienced some less than stellar things in childhood. However, it did make me who I am today, but you don't want that for your kids, right? Like, I don't want my kids to go through any kind of trauma to get on the other side of it, but also how do you let them fall and learn to get back up on their own? Having had 2 kids, with one, I was just, new mom and always like, "Don't do that, you'll get hurt." Yeah, I was like, put him in bubble wrap and don't let him get hurt. He's this precious little thing that I just birthed. I see that now a decade later, kind of like that impact that my behavior had on him because, a lot of times, he's afraid to do stuff because he doesn't want to get hurt. And I know in my soul that that's directly from all that. "Ugh, don't do the, don't touch that, don't do that." That was all of that. Whereas by the time the second one came around, and I don't know if I was just like passed out. I'm not really sure what I was doing for the first 3 years of her life, but I wasn't quite as on everything. Obviously, you just can't be when you have two of them, and She is way more carefree and willing to take risks and not afraid of things. And I mean, that's a direct result, in my opinion, of parenting styles and the way that I handled that. And if there's a new mom out there listening to this and you are, tend to run on the anxious side, like take note of, it's okay if they fall and skin their knee. I mean, as much as we hate to see our kids get hurt, it's okay and maybe might actually be better for them.
But, you hear that a lot from parents with 2 kids, like, the first one, of course, a new parent, and by the second one, they're like, so the pacifier fell on the floor for a second.
Right.
Whatever."
Right.
You learn that they're just gonna be fine.
And then they say the third one comes along and you don't even know where that kid is half the time. Like, they just run away and you're like, "Well, they'll come back when they get hungry," you know, or they'll eat dinner off the car floor. It's fine.
Right. 100% feral.
100% feral. I love it.
That's right.
Danielle, you are such a fun guest. This book is not
Mhm.
to be missed. It is a great gift for any new parent. A Wine Lover's Guide to Parenting by Danielle Frank. Make sure you pick up your copy. I know you can find it on Amazon. You can get it on your Kindle. You can get it next day if you have Amazon Prime. But where else can people find you, Danielle?
Oh, well, thank you guys for having me on your fabulous podcast. This has been so fun. As you said, the book is on Amazon. It's also at barnesandnoble.com. You can find me at I have a website, daniellefrankauthor.com, or Instagram at create a great story.
Ooh,
Ooh, I love that.
okay. Create a
That's a
great
fun
story. Are
handle.
you working on another great story?
I am working on a whiskey lover's guide to dog breeds.
Oh,
I
It'll be a little
love
different
that.
amazing.
for me. Yeah.
I love it.
So, but this one, I'm hoping a publisher out there hears this and wants to publish
Mhm.
that because it's a lot of work to self-publish.
It is a lot of
Anybody
work.
interested out there, it's available to be published.
I love that. I could see
That's
that in
awesome.
like the gift shops of the distilleries. All right. Well, I think that's all we've got for this week, y'all. Until next
Mhm.
time,
That's it. Be
Lilas.
sure to tune in. We're out.